There I was, standing in a public shower at a crowded beach in Queensland, smelling like a giant bag of salt and vinegar chips. I was not just wet, I was drenched in actual vinegar, and while I was frantically scrubbing my legs and screaming at the sky, a group of 10-year-olds on a school trip stood there pointing and laughing. One of them was actually filming me for what I assume is a very successful TikTok about losers at the beach. But how did I get here? How did a simple snorkeling trip to the Great Barrier Reef turn into a crime scene for my dignity? It all started with a dream of being a tropical influencer. It ended with me becoming a cautionary tale. We have all seen those photos on social media. You know the ones, the crystal clear turquoise water, the vibrant coral, and that perfect serene shot of someone swimming effortlessly next to a friendly sea turtle. I wanted to be that person. I had spent months imagining myself as a modern-day Jacques Cousteau, only with better hair and significantly less scientific knowledge. My plan was simple: get on the boat, jump in the water, find Nemo, and collect my 1,000 likes. I expected a marine wonderland where the fish would practically pose for me. I envisioned a day of gentle waves and sun-kissed skin, the kind of vacation that makes your ex-coworkers seethe with jealousy. I had the high-end snorkel gear, the waterproof phone case, and a level of optimism that was frankly dangerous. But Australia has a very different plan for people who show up with that kind of attitude. The Great Barrier Reef is not a theme park. It is a wild, untamed wilderness that actively wants to remind you where you sit on the food chain. And spoiler alert, I was sitting somewhere near the bottom, right next to the plankton. I was about to learn that the distance between a breathtaking view and a total disaster is much shorter than it looks. The first sign of trouble was not even in the water. It was the sun. Now, the sun in Queensland is not like the sun in the rest of the world. It is a literal laser beam from space designed to cook human flesh on contact. I had applied sun protection factor 50 or so, I thought. But in my rush to get my flippers on and look cool for the boat crew, I completely forgot about the back of my calves. By 11 in the morning, I could feel my legs starting to sizzle like cheap bacon. It was a slow, pulsing heat that warned me of the disaster to come. But I was distracted. I was so focused on finding a secluded spot away from the noisy tourists that I ignored the most basic rule of snorkeling: never lose sight of the big boat with the snacks. I swam further and further out, chasing a school of shiny fish that turned out to be, well, just fish. The water was beautiful, sure, but the current was doing something sneaky. It was pulling me away from the group and toward a patch of water that looked suspiciously calm. And yet, did I notice the warning flags or the whistle blowing in the distance? Of course not. I was too busy trying to adjust my mask and look like a professional adventurer. By the time I realized the tour boat looked like a tiny toy on the horizon, I was already in the danger zone. That was when I saw them, thousands of tiny translucent blue balloons bobbing on the surface. They looked cute, honestly, like a festive aquatic party I had accidentally been invited to. I thought to myself, oh, look at these harmless little bubbles. They are called bluebottles, and in Australia, they are the equivalent of floating electric fences. Before I could even process what they were, a wave pushed me right into the thick of them. It was not a sting, it was an assault. It felt like someone had wrapped white-hot barbed wire around my ankles and was slowly tightening it. The pain was immediate and blinding. I panicked, which is exactly what you should not do in the ocean. I started thrashing around, which only served to wrap more of those invisible, stinging tentacles around my legs. The sensation was like being repeatedly shocked while someone poured acid on your skin. In that moment, the dream of being an influencer died. I was not a majestic sea creature. I was just a flailing human noodle in a sea of pain. But was anyone coming to save me? The boat was gone, and the only thing nearby was a jagged rock sticking out of the water. I managed to scramble onto the rock, a tiny, jagged island that I thought would be my sanctuary. I was panting. My legs were on fire, and I was pretty sure I was going to die right there in my neon blue snorkel mask. But I was not alone. This was not a secluded beach for tourists. It was a private fortress for a very large, very grumpy colony of seagulls and terns. And they were not happy about the giant, sweating intruder in flippers. One particular seagull, let us call him Steven, took a personal interest in my gear. He did not just want me off his rock, he wanted my snorkel. Every time I tried to adjust my mask, Steven would dive bomb my head with the precision of a fighter jet. So there I was, stinging from jellyfish, burning from the sun, and engaged in a high-stakes tug-of-war with a bird over a piece of plastic. The island smelled like ancient fish and bird droppings, and the noise was deafening. I was stranded on a rock in the middle of the ocean, being bullied by a creature that eats garbage for a living. The question is, could this situation possibly get any worse? As the tide started to rise, I realized the answer was a definitive yes. The climax of my misery arrived when I realized the tide was coming in. My tiny rock sanctuary was shrinking, the birds were getting louder, and my legs had reached a level of inflammation that made them look like overstuffed sausages. I was waving my arms like a madman, hoping someone on the distant boat would see me, but they were busy serving lattes to people who actually listened to the safety briefing. I felt a wave of pure, unadulterated regret. I had traded my safety, my skin, and my pride for a photo that I had not even managed to take. My phone was in a waterproof bag, but my fingers were shaking too much to even type an SOS. I was genuinely convinced I was going to become a permanent resident of Bird Island, or just a very sunburnt snack for the sharks. Just as Stephen the Seagull was lining up for another run at my face, I saw a flicker of hope on the water. A yellow kayak, a lone human being paddling toward my personal hell. I did not even care if they were a murderer. I was ready to be rescued by anyone who did not have feathers or stinging tentacles. I started screaming for help, probably sounding more like a wounded seal than a human. The kayaker was a local named Bruce who looked at me with a mix of pity and deep, soul-crushing disappointment. He did not say much. He just handed me a rope and told me to hold on. The tow of shame back to the main beach was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I was dragged through the water like a sad, sunburnt boy while Bruce paddled with the effortless grace of someone who actually knows how the ocean works. When we finally hit the sand, I had to pay $100 for a private water taxi because my tour boat had rightfully given up on me and headed back to the mainland. That is when the vinegar happened. Apparently, it is the only thing that stops the bluebottle toxins from firing, so I spent the afternoon as a public attraction, the smelly, red, crying tourist being doused in salad dressing. My skin was a vibrant shade of magenta, and my dignity was officially non-existent. But as I sat there, smelling like a sub sandwich and watching the sunset, I realized I had survived. I was broke, I was burnt, and I was incredibly sticky, but I was alive. My dignity cost me $100 and several layers of skin. Professional tip: if the locals are not in the water and those purple flags are flying, stay on the sand. Do not be like me. Do not let the Instagram lead you into a swarm of jellyfish. Thanks for listening to my disaster. If you enjoyed my pain, hit subscribe for more unfiltered travel nightmares. I have got plenty more stories where this came from. See you in the next one.